Today we are going to be looking at Next.js, and we're going to be doing an introduction to Next.js with my special guest. 3, 2, 1. Well, I don't, it's the wrong way. Welcome to Metal and Coffee. It's 7 a.m. How are you doing today?
Ooh, still waking up. I got my Panther coffee cup.
Oh, look, I've got mine too.
Twinsies.
What are we going to build?
Well, I've always been wanting to use the Spotify API. I would like to ultimately build a metal music recommender app that has some aspect of my curation in it. It's going to be a huge project. There's so many aspects to it, but I figured I could start small and use something like Next.js to start out with it because I hear it scales well. So that's what I would like to do.
So the primary reason initially why you would use something like Next.js, which is a static site generator, is the fact that at build time, it generates all of your data and it puts it into the build folder, and it's available statically for people to get when they visit your site, and it's super fast. It works without JavaScript. That's the beauty of it as well. So my question to you is, because it sounds like when you first pitched this project to me, you wanted a very dynamic experience for the user to be able to search through lots of data. The way you would generally present lots of different data with Next.js is on different page routes. For example, womenwhostream.tech is a Next.js site. It allows users to essentially search through all these different categories. Like you might want to search through genres for your music. And each one of these routes is generated at build time from the data from the CMS. What I see that you could do is, so you gave me a URL to get like the genres from Spotify. What we could do is generate a single URL for each of the genres to show you how Next.js generates dynamic routes. But that's my initial thoughts of how we could do this. So I'll show you how the pages work. I'll show you then how you get data into a page at build time, and then how you will generate dynamic page routes at build time based on data as well. All right, so there's a couple of things that I want to go through about the structure of the Next.js project first of all, and some of it is to do with accessibility and what you get with Next.js by default. We've already got a new Next app created, so I've got a live share going, and I thought that would be the easiest way to do this. So first of all, if you look at the file tree, there are 3 main directories that you need to know about what they do. So the first one is the pages folder. And what that does, whatever .js file you put at the root of the pages folder generates a root for that. So index.js is obviously just the /home root. And if you created /hello.js, it would automatically create a /hello root. And that's what's really nice about Next compared to React, when you have to do a lot of manual routing. Anything you put in the pages folder creates a page. The app file is something you won't really need to worry about right now, but it's something that you put global stuff. So if you have global styles, we're going to add a document.js in a minute, but the order of loading goes document app and then the page route you're on. The API folder, which I think we're actually going to have to use in this project, is where you keep all your serverless functions. So the great thing about Next.js was the ability to essentially run Node whenever you want with these serverless functions. What's great is that it doesn't block the page rendering, and you can use that to just get extra data when you need it. You wouldn't run a serverless function at build time generally. I use serverless functions on my dashboard page, which updates my stats and stuff. And what this does, if we go to the network tab, yeah, there we go. So it's just run these 4 serverless functions to get updated data for Twitch, YouTube, GitHub, and Twitter. This runs on the server, and then it passes the data back to the client. And when you use something called use SWR, which is built by Vercel, it's like a React hook, it then slots the data back onto the page where it needs to be. So that's kind of how serverless functions are intended to be used in the background for data that will change a little bit more often. And there's lots of different ways that you can get data with Next.js. There's the static site generated data that's done at build time. You can also render stuff on the client and make a call to an API on the client. And then you can also use something called Incremental Static Regeneration, which is essentially statically building, but within a period of revalidating, it rebuilds it in the background. It's kind of like a serverless function, but it happens on the deep server rather than the server that you see in front of you here. There's like 4 different ways you can get data to a page in Next.js, depending on how up to date you want it to be. With your Spotify one, it seems like you don't really need it to be that up to date. It's just like, here's the Spotify data, here it is, let's build it, and let's let someone use it. So that's the API folder. If you've ever used Netlify and serverless functions on Netlify, it's equivalent to the Netlify functions folder, where you would put all of your serverless functions there. Public is where you put static things that don't change. So your favicons, maybe your open graph image. Yeah, I've got my fav icons, I've got my RSS feed, robots.tech, sitemap, all that stuff that you would generally have at the root of a basic HTML project. And you can access all of these via slash. So like /feed.xml, /sitemap, /Apple Touch icon. You can just access them from the root. Your styles folder, this is just a packaged up folder that Next.js gives you when you set up a new app. You don't have to keep this folder. When I set up, I create a components folder as well to keep all my React components. The first thing I actually want to do is show you a couple of optimizations that I normally make to my Next projects for accessibility and developer experience as well. The first one, now, I'm probably not going to ask you to run this bash script, but I want to show you what I do to make the application accessible. I was talking about adding a _document.js file to the pages folder. And the reason why we do this is because there's no lang attribute on the HTML as standard on Next.js right now. This is directly from the Next.js documentation that says if you want a custom document, start with this. We're going to just create in the pages folder a new file called document.js, and I'm going to just add that code in.
What does the lang attribute do?
So the first thing is screen readers know how to read out and pronounce the words if you have a language attribute on your HTML. And the second one is also browsers will hyphenate words differently. If you use hyphens auto in your CSS, your browser will detect the language and it will hyphenate your words accordingly. So that is now going to give us an HTML tag with lang equals en on it. And then the next thing I always like to do is, so you don't have to use relative path imports in Next.js, which can look like this and be a nightmare to deal with, I like to add a jsconfig.json file to the root, and this is functionality that comes with Next, and you add like fancy paths to this to be able to access your paths really nicely in your code with an @ symbol. So I'm just going to add this for you. Now you can access @components and @styles in your project whenever you want. That's the setup. Let's go into the index page. So if you actually do an npm run dev to start up the server, here we go. Create Next app. Welcome to Next.js. Get started by editing pages/index. One thing to mention, you always need a head at the moment. You can abstract this away, but the head puts all of the required title, description, and other stuff inside the HTML. There are plugins you can use to abstract this away, such as Next SEO, and I do mine generally with an extra component that has head inside it, but in Next you need that head. It's very similar to how React works with like React Helmet. And it's also worth mentioning that the styles that come shipped with Next.js are CSS modules, which scope the styles to the component that it's used in. So for example, you see up here on line 3, it says import styles from styles home module, and we can actually use this now. What that's doing is grabbing all of those styles from the home module.css as styles, and then you declare them by styles dot whatever the class name is. If you want to create a CSS module file, you always have to do name.module.css. You'll notice that the globals file, globals.css, is just globals.css, and that is not a module. That's not going to be scoped to a component when it's loaded. Basically, it means that the styles such as container and title inside the home module, it means you can repeat those class names in other modules and they won't interfere because they'll be given a unique ID in the DOM. You'll see that there is a home, which is the module name, title, which is the class name, and then it's suffixed by a random ID that's generated, which means that if you have another CSS file, such as page, with the class title in, it means that you can still do that, and you don't need to separate your style names as much. We're going to have recommended artists, and we're going to have a genre list. So let's work on the genre list first, and let's just work on getting the genre list as data to this page, which will be generated at build time. And it means that it won't be making a client-side call when somebody visits the page. It'll just be there as static HTML. The way a next file is structured really is you have all your imports at the top. You export a default function. It doesn't matter what this is called as long as you don't repeat that name across different pages. And then this is what your page will be, your HTML. And then underneath the HTML, essentially the JSX, you have a choice of using different async functions to get data depending on how you want to get your data. So getStaticProps is the one I would recommend for making sure that your page is really super fast. GetServerSideProps works in a similar way, but it does it at every request on the server. So it doesn't do it in the browser on the client when the user makes the request to the page, but it builds all the data on the server and then hydrates the page and spits it out to the browser. So we're going to use getStaticProps. So the way we do this is you're going to type export async function getStaticProps and the squigglies.
Got it.
Okay, so inside the squigglies, what we're going to end up returning is an object with a property props, and then open another object. And what I always like to do is decide how I'm going to send this data first of all. So I think we can just have an array that's just genres.
Genres.
Just
array.
do that for now. Yeah, that's perfect. Because then before we even get this data, we are going to go up to the top of the file and we're going to set up the home page to take in that data. So what I like to think of it is, it starts from the bottom, you take your data at the bottom and it goes up to the top and you insert it into the function. So inside the home bracket, you can do it one of two ways. I'll show you one way. Every function like this with the getStaticProps or getServerSideProps will pass the variable props to the JSX. So what you can do here is const genres equals props and deconstruct it like that, which means that in your JSX you will have access to map over that array of genres in here. If you want to save a line, you can abstract the variable out of props up there. Like that. And so I always like to set that up there. So now that page is still going to work because your genres are being defined as an empty array. If you wanted to add something here, let's just do a test and test2. If we console log out the genres and you go into the console, we should see the two genres come out in the console. And now we can do whatever we want with them. So we're aiming to get the real data from Spotify and to then pass it up. So we want to make a call to Spotify, and we're going to make a call to Spotify in getStaticProps. The first thing we need to do is we need to put your API keys into a .env file so we don't expose them. If you're familiar with Node and Node apps and you want to use environment variables, you normally will install something like .env to manage those environment variables for you and take them out of those .env files and make them available on a process variable. Next does that for you. So if you just create a .env file in the root, normally the way you would create a variable is with capital letters and underscores. So with next env files, if you want it to be exposed to the client, you use next_public_. If you only want your API key available on the server, which we do in this case, we don't need it on the client. We just put the env file in and the client can't read it because it's all in the server. Right, so you've got your env, client ID, and client secret. Cool. So what we're going to do is we are going to make a call to Spotify inside getStaticProps, and it's probably going to be easiest to use fetch, and it's really nice that fetch just works properly inside Next. The fact that this is an async function means you can use async await inside getStaticProps as well. Set up a little fetch headers. Then we've just got the authorization bearer, and then you can put your OAuth token in there. And it's process.env that. Process.env dot. Yeah, okay.
Oh, got you.
When you add a new environment variable, you've always got to stop and start the server again.
Oh, okay.
It's worth understanding when you console log things where the console log is going to appear. For example, when in the JSX we console log genres here, that is in the browser console. But when you console log things when you're doing getStaticProps or getServer-side-props, that's in the server console, which is right here. We do have a response of a status 200. Cool. So what we want to do now, if we console log response JSON here, that will resolve that promise, and we will see the data in the terminal. Let's just do return response.json, and let's console log data here.
Okay. Ooh, look at that.
Look, we've got all of the genres. So what we can actually do now is call that genres, and we can just pass in genres there. It's genres.genres. The data that we get back here is an object with the key genres, which is an array. So let's do data here, and then let's do genres equals data.genres, and there we go. That will fix that.
Curly brackets is where you can actually put JavaScript code in.
Yes.
And then I can do a genres.map.
Yes.
All right. So now maybe I can do return an li.
Do you want to do a shorthand on this? You can actually, if you get rid of that, perfect. So we've got music recommender, recommended artists, and we've got the whole list of all the genres. Do you want to create a root for each one of these genres?
Okay.
What we're going to end up with is something like /acoustic. We're going to use getStaticPaths. And what this does is it creates a root for every single bit of data that you pass into it. Now, how we create a static root is like this. So in the pages folder, we will have a new file and we'll have something like this. A dynamic root is identified with square brackets around it. This is the page on which we will make that same call to get all the genres and use getStaticPaths to generate all of those routes with specific data. So it's going to be like this kind of flow. So you use getStaticPath to create all the routes, and then you use getStaticProps based on that route, and then we can use that route, say for example acoustic or funk, we use that parameter to get the data for the page that we need. To make things easier, I'm just going to copy this whole page and put it in genre and call this genre. We don't know what data we are getting yet, so get rid of that. So getStaticProps receives a context, very much like what a page will receive as props. So it gets particular props from the server. It's generally called a context, and that's how it's demonstrated in the documentation. We are now going to, above that, so generally the way people do this is like, because you need to run getStaticPaths before getStaticProps, that you normally put getStaticPaths above getStaticProps. So now we're going to export async function getStaticPaths. So here we want to move that genre getting code from getStaticProps to getStaticPaths. I'm just going to make this safe right now. We're going to make that exact same call up there. And then what we do is we want to return this from getStaticPaths. The params here are going to be formatted like this. So paths is an array of objects that has a params dot, so it would be something like this, genre, and this will be like acoustic, funk, right? And then what happens is when we've changed all of the data from this response into this object, what we'll get in here is a params.genre for each single page. We've got data.genres and we want to now construct this array to give to the paths property here.
So what you suggest I do, I map through the data.genres
Yes.
paths, and then we'll do data.genres map.
So you want
So it'll be
to return an object that looks like line 36.
okay. And then an object in there will be genre.
Do you know a shorthand way you can do that?
Oh, just genre, right?
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
And then you can just do paths equals genre paths. Sweet. Okay. Now you will have, because you've sent through params.genre, you will now have params.genre in getStaticProps. So you can pass in that single genre for now without doing anything. Oh, that needs to be params.genre. You have to return there because it's squiggly and it was not actually returning it, so you couldn't use that shorthand there.
Got
I
it.
believe.
Okay. And I even gotta put more squigglies around it, right? Or
Yes, you do. Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, there we go. Then you have genre, and you can render genre on the page. So now we've got it. Look, genre acoustic. We'll have funk as well. So what that getStaticPaths has done is generated at build time statically every single URL. And if you do an npm run build, that's going to do the next build process on your command line, and it's going to generate the build folder, the .next folder. Because I want to show you what it's generated for you and what it will generate at build time and how it all fits together. It should also tell you in this build process which URLs it's generated. Here you can see it shows all your different routes. So it's created acoustic, Afrobeat, and alt rock, and 123 more paths. And it's done that just from this getStaticPaths. It's generated all of those dynamic routes from that one little function, which is really powerful because you can, you were talking about scaling earlier. That on a build pipeline means that, yes, that can take a long time if you have like thousands of pages, but it means that your site is ready to go and fast once it's been built. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use this genre param and use another API call to get songs for that genre, or get a recommendation based on a genre.
Yes, and I think you can send the genre seed as a request in that.
So you would do like seed genres equals on the get request as a parameter here? Okay.
Seed genres equals, and then I can do string interpolation to... Wait.
I'll fix it.
Oh, params. Okay.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. All right. Then we do params.genre.
Sweet.
So that should give us
some data.
What we need.
This is fun. I've never worked with the Spotify API before.
Yeah, me either. It's been so intimidating, so this is nice to like work through it together.
Yeah. We got loads of recommendations. Cool. And we've just got them in an object of .tracks. Okay. So I guess you just want to send the genre through and the tracks through.
Yeah.
So you can add another property to props to send the tracks through. Sweet. And then accept the tracks at the top of the page. Beautiful.
There we go.
And then I guess you can print out the tracks in a loop and see what we've got. The next thing we'll do actually is I'll show you how to do a link from the list on the homepage to all of the internal routes that have been created. Right, so let's have a look at Funk.
We got all the tracks.
Yeah, we got all the tracks. I want to go to Chicago House, yo.
Chicago House.
Hallelujah, Club Mix. I want to know what that one is. Right, so sweet. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use the next link component. So rather than using anchor links to navigate between all the pages, what you've got inside Next.js is kind of like a single page application link, which doesn't do like a full browser redirect refresh to a new URL. It's an internal link, and because it's technically a single page application, it will be really fast navigating and it will change the URL history inbuilt as well. Inside index.js, we're going to import link from next link. And how we use it is like this. Inside the li, I'm going to add a link like this. And what you also need to do is add an a inside it.
Okay.
The documentation is available if you want to read it at some point. But then we do this, and then we add an href. You want a slash, and then you want the genre. That is going to give you an internal next link. That means you can navigate really quickly through to that URL. If we go to the home page, so I can now click on death metal and it will go to death metal. And it looks slow right now because we're in a development environment and we're over live share, but on a live site, it's really quick. For example, I use the same thing on my website here. Go to projects, look how quick it loads. It doesn't do like a full browser reload.
So that's Next.js doing that,
Yes.
like no page reload, it's just going to the routes. Okay,
Yeah.
Perfect.
There are other parameters that you can add if you want to prevent scrolling up to the top when you navigate between pages and stuff, which is really useful. I do it for this page actually on users. Down here, so these are next link, and they have is scrollable false or something. So when I click on hardware, it doesn't go back to the top of the page. If I go here, but it's changing the URL to users/productivity, users/streaming, but it doesn't scroll back to the top of the page. So it provides some really cool functionality. So on our genre pages, we have home link. We can go back to home, and we can now go back to guitar.
I'm just going to actually beef out the output for the track. So, okay, it's an array of objects of artists. So I would have to like loop through it.
Should we create a track component that takes the track data, and then we can render this out a little bit easier?
Yes.
I do it like this normally. Track. And inside I will put an index.js. And here I will just create a very basic, I've got a little shortcut in VS Code. So we've got a track, and it's going to take, again, each component takes a props object, which you can abstract out here and just do track. We can do a console log on the track there. And then inside genre, import track from, and we can use our components track. And what we'll do here is for each track, we will just render track equals track. We take that and put that inside the track.
All right.
Which is going to be an li. You can then console log all of the track stuff that you need up there. We'll have the key here. Let's track, and then here we'll just put track name. And then you can do whatever you want with it.
But I did it.
You did it. Let's see.
Perfect.
Where is it? Oh, here we go. So we got that. Now, should we get the image? Should we render the image? The thing with next image, number one, prevents cumulative layout shift. You know, when you go to a page and when things start loading in, content gets pushed down the page. Now, cumulative layout shift is one of the core web vitals that Google search engine rates your website on. And if your cumulative layout shift score is above 0.1, it's bad. It creates the space on the page for it. And what it also does, it lazy loads it in. So if I scroll down really fast, so you can see you've got all this space of these images that will load gradually as you scroll down. It doesn't load until the user scrolls down to that image as well. It means that the user doesn't download those images until they see them in the viewport. Now, there are ways that you can do this with plain HTML and JavaScript as well, but Next also gives you the responsive optimizations as well, and your pages are pretty well optimized. If I look at one of these images, basically it gives you a whole like source set. So you just give it one image component with the height and width. Next image converts it to a whole source set at all these different device widths. So that they see how they're coming from _next/image. The Next console is going to give us a warning when we try to use it. It'll tell you how to fix it as well. But if we import image from Next image, let's just add, so we do an image here, and the source is going to be, let's just do the first image for now, track.images0.url. And what's great actually about
that album, that images.
Oh, stop. Thank you.
Yeah.
What's great actually about the Spotify API is that it gives us the width and height of the images, right? And the Next image component, they give you 4 different types of layouts. Layout responsive is the easiest one to use. And when you use layout.responsive, it requires you to put in height and width. And obviously, alt text, which we'll just, for now, we'll just do track.name.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is going to give us an error in the console when we try to reload this and go to the page. Okay, you've got 500 error because this says i.scdn.co is not configured under images in your next.config.js. So you can choose to specify which domains you want the image optimizations to run on. And you only need to put the domain in. Nothing else, not the protocol or anything. And then after a change to the next config, you have to stop and start the server again.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, there we go.
Huge.
Cool. So we got images that are optimized. So that, as you can see, we go down, we scroll down, they're not loading until we get down to the bottom of the page. So whereas if you used an image, a standard HTML image tag, you would have all of these that have to load on the page, and it might shift your content down as they end up coming through. But Next deals with that and lazy loads them for you. And also, I believe if you use the biggest image, it should at different screen sizes respond. If your component uses layout responsive or layout fill, right? So when Next image has optimized, it's taken the source image, optimized it, and rendered it into loads of different files based on different device sizes, it should load those different ones at those different sizes. Let's just quickly recap what we've covered. We've covered setting up your Next.js project and making it accessible with a document, JS. We've covered the JS config to deal with all the ... paths. We have covered what the pages do. We've covered dynamic routes. We've covered getting data statically at build time for both routes and pages. We've covered Next image and Next link. And I guess now we just go wild with making it look nice.
Just to cover the naming conventions for the CSS modules. So whenever you create anything, for example, for the track component, if I want to create a styling for that track component, I create a file called track.module.css in the styles folder. Is that correct?
You can call it whatever you want and put it wherever you want. But what I generally do is I will create track.module.css inside styles, and I would import it up here and just say import styles from track.module.css. Sometimes in some projects, I put my style files inside my component folders. And also the reason why I generally would create a track folder here rather than just create track.js is this means inside that folder you can keep SVGs that are specific to the component. You can keep test files that are specific to the component if you have them. And so sometimes people prefer to keep everything in one place: SVGs, styles, tests, and the actual component file inside one folder. Because especially when you're working in a larger scale application, and say, for example, someone builds a new track component, all you need to do is delete that folder and put a new folder in, rather than trying to work out where all of the different files come from in a really large scale like application, like for example e-commerce.
But I'll go ahead and do some CSS grid, since that's my favorite thing ever.
Oh, these look good.
Look at that.
It's lovely.
We're getting somewhere.
Getting somewhere.
I think ideally I want the text to overlay the image in some
I knew you were
cute
going to say
little
that.
way, you know?
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
Since I want to do a Next.js project and utilize the static site generation and how fast everything is, I'll probably end up turning this into like just a curation list. Like, since I am a metal DJ, I do have various playlists on my profile. So if anyone wants to see what various playlists and what latest metal is coming out, I actually end up having a list of my playlist on here, and then having this. Basically.
I like that. One of the other things that I wanted to mention was the incremental static regeneration. Say, for example, on the index page, if these genres were changing often and you wanted to make sure that your site was up to date, and you didn't want to, number one, rebuild the whole site every 5 minutes, and you don't want to do a client-side request for that data, you can use the revalidate parameter. Somebody visits your site, and Vercel will check if the data is still in date. It will check it every second. So you can change that to 60 or 6,000, however long you wanted it to revalidate. A user visits your site, Vercel realizes that the data that's presented is out of date. So it will rebuild it in the background without you having to kick off a new build. Then the next person that sees your site will see the up-to-date data. And then every time someone visits it, Vercel will check in the background if it's in date. I use this with Women Who Stream, right? So right now, I'm going to refresh the page and it will show that I'm streaming. Here it says 115 viewers. That's quite a data point that changes a lot. So the revalidate on this, I think, is 1 minute. And now it's changed to 114. But what's really exciting about this is that's not a client-side request. That's still a build time statically generated data request. The first time I visited the site, Vercel realized it was out of date. It rebuilt it, and then the next time I visited it, it was the right data again. So you can use ISR, Incremental Static Regeneration. If it doesn't really matter if the data is out of date, it doesn't really matter here if that data is out of date. I could get it on the client if I want, but I don't want to. I want my page to be really fast, and I don't want the user to have to wait for that data. And that's why ISR is good. If you don't mind some people seeing out of date data, you're going to update your playlist, for example, on Spotify, and you say like 6 hours. So you could probably set that to, I mean, it doesn't matter the interval really, but you could set it to 60, that's every minute, and that's not going to be like too hefty on the serverless stuff. Incremental static regeneration is a serverless function, right? And so when you do have ISR enabled using this revalidate, you will be using up server and resources. Front-end development, when you get to host it on these kind of platforms like Vercel and Netlify, it's not just static site and gone. Like when you're using something like Next, you're using server resources as well. And you do get some very generous limits. See, look, these are all my functions. So this is all my ISR. This was when Women Who Stream was going wild with ISR when we were doing all of that, trying to update Women Who Stream with ISR. 93,259, because I was rebuilding it every minute at one point. We're rewriting the whole thing. What's the biggest thing that you've taken away from today? I would like to know.
Let's see. That Next.js has a lot of really great built-in capabilities right out of the box. And I think the coolest one so far is the image component. I just really like the lazy loading. The coolest thing is actually that dynamic route thing, because when I was first learning React and diving into React Router, that was the most confusing.
I don't know how to use that still.
Ever. Yeah. But the fact that you can use getStaticPaths to automatically generate paths based in just make sure that the the data is in this correct format, that's really, really awesome and takes like away most of the headache of dealing with a site that has so many pages.
Imagine just doing that in React. How would you even do that in React? How?
I don't even know.
Well, I think we're done. I've had such a great time with you, and let's do it again. So I've obviously go and watch Metal and Coffee. How often do you stream?
2 coding streams a week. So those coding streams are on Thursday nights and Sunday afternoons. I'm in Eastern Standard Time, so it's whatever that converts to your time zone. But yeah, I mostly work on a lot of Node stuff. I'm trying to teach myself Node. I built my own Twitch bot, and I'm trying to work on expanding that functionality right now. And I'll be working on this new app too that I worked on with White Panther.
Amazing. Cool.
So I'm excited.
Please show your appreciation for Metal and Coffee, and I've had such good fun. And so I'm just gonna go on intermission, and then I'll stay on the line with you and then say bye properly. And so I will see you all in a sec. Thank you for joining me again, and so I'll be right back. Bye.